Your brain was programmed to avoid success. What if everything you've been told about discipline is backwards? What if the real reason you keep procrastinating has almost nothing to do with laziness, weak willpower, or a lack of motivation? Imagine discovering that your brain has been trained to resist the very actions that could change your life. Not because it's broken, but because it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Think about your average day. You unlock your phone just to check one notification, and 20 minutes disappear. You promise yourself you'll start working after one more video, one more scroll, one more break. Then, when you finally sit down to focus, your energy seems to vanish within minutes. It feels like your brain is fighting against you. The frustrating part is that the harder you try to force yourself, the stronger the resistance becomes. Here's the truth that most people never hear. Your brain isn't asking one simple question: is this important? It's asking a completely different question. Is this worth the effort compared to everything else available right now? Modern distractions have become experts at answering that question before your goals ever get a chance. Every notification, every short video, every instant reward teaches your brain that pleasure should arrive immediately, while meaningful work begins to feel slow, expensive, and even threatening. Behavioral scientists have spent years studying how repeated rewards reshape our decisions. Researchers have shown that the brain continuously updates what it expects to be rewarding, and those expectations influence what captures our attention next. In other words, every distraction you repeat is quietly training your brain to want more distractions tomorrow. This isn't happening because you're weak. It's happening because your reward system is learning exactly what you keep teaching it. Now imagine something completely different. Imagine waking up and feeling the same pull toward finishing difficult work that you currently feel toward checking your phone. Imagine reaching a point where discipline no longer feels like a daily battle because your brain actually starts craving progress instead of comfort. It sounds impossible, but it isn't. People who appear incredibly disciplined aren't winning because they have more. They're winning because they've unknowingly changed the way their brain predicts rewards. And that's exactly what you're going to discover in this video. There is a hidden mechanism behind dopamine that almost nobody explains correctly. Once you understand how it works, you'll stop fighting your brain and start retraining it. By the end of this video, you'll see why discipline is not something you force. It's something you program. And the first discovery will completely change the way you think about procrastination forever. Your brain isn't lazy, it's economical. If your brain is capable of learning difficult skills, solving complex problems, and adapting to almost any environment, then why does it resist something as simple as sitting down to work? The answer is surprisingly simple. Your brain isn't trying to stop you from succeeding. It's trying to save energy. For most of human history, energy was a limited resource. Our ancestors never knew when the next meal would come, so the brain evolved to avoid spending unnecessary effort. Researchers who study decision-making explain that the brain constantly weighs costs against reward before allowing you to act. Without you realizing it, it asks, is this worth the energy I'm about to spend? That calculation made perfect sense thousands of years ago. Today, however, we live in a world filled with rewards that require almost no effort. Your phone, social media, video platforms, junk food, and endless entertainment offer immediate satisfaction with almost zero energy investment. Compared to those options, studying, exercising, building a business, or learning a new skill seem incredibly expensive. This is why forcing yourself through willpower alone rarely works for long. You're trying to overpower a system that was designed to choose the option with the highest expected reward for the lowest expected effort. The brain isn't being irrational. It's following the prediction that has kept humans alive for generations. A simple example makes this clear. Imagine two buttons in front of you. One gives you a small reward instantly. The other gives you a much bigger reward, but only after an hour of focused work. Unless you've trained your brain differently, it will naturally be attracted to the first button. Not because you lack ambition, but because your reward system has learned to value certainty and immediacy over delayed success. The encouraging news is that this calculation isn't fixed. Specialists in brain plasticity have shown that the brain continuously updates its expectations based on repeated experiences. Every time you associate effort with a meaningful reward, you begin rewriting that internal equation. The system that once pushed you toward distractions can gradually start pulling you toward productive actions instead. But this raises an even bigger question. If everyone's brain follows the same basic rules, why do some people genuinely enjoy difficult work while others struggle just to begin? The answer lies in a hidden dopamine mechanism that controls almost every decision you make. And it's far different from what most people believe. The dopamine prediction error that controls your entire life. Most people think dopamine is the chemical that makes you feel good. That idea is incomplete. And in many situations, it's completely misleading. Dopamine is less about pleasure and more about expectation. It helps your brain predict where the next rewarding experience is likely to come from. Imagine checking your phone. You don't know what you'll find. Maybe it's an exciting message, maybe nothing happened. That uncertainty is exactly what keeps you coming back. Behavioral researchers have found that unpredictable rewards create stronger anticipation than rewards you can fully predict. Your brain starts chasing the possibility of a reward, not the reward itself. Now think about what happens after hundreds or even thousands of repetitions. Every notification, every short video, every quick hit of entertainment teaches your brain the same lesson. Fast rewards are everywhere, and they're easy to get. Meanwhile, reading a book, writing a report, or learning a difficult skill provides little immediate feedback. Your brain begins predicting that deep work offers a poor short-term return. This is why important tasks often feel heavy before you've even started them. The discomfort isn't proof that the task is impossible. It's simply your brain making an inaccurate prediction based on past conditioning. It expects low reward and high effort, so it generates resistance before you take the first step. The good news is that predictions can be Neuroscientists explain that every time reality produces a better outcome than the brain expected, the reward system updates its future predictions. In other words, your brain is constantly learning what deserves your attention. That means the goal isn't to eliminate dopamine-driven behavior, it's to redirect it. Instead of training your brain to expect excitement from distractions, you can train it to anticipate progress, mastery, and achievement. Once that shift begins, focus becomes easier because your brain stops treating meaningful work as a punishment. This changes everything because discipline isn't created by fighting your reward system. It's created by teaching your reward system to want different things. The next step is understanding how people who seem naturally disciplined accomplish exactly that without even realizing it. Identity comes before discipline. Most people try to change their behavior first and hope their identity will catch up later. That's why they keep saying things like, "I'm trying to be more disciplined." The problem is that your brain hears something very different. It hears that discipline belongs to someone else, not to you. Psychologists who study habits have observed that the brain works hard to stay consistent with the identity you believe is true. If you see yourself as someone who always procrastinates, your mind will quietly search for behaviors that confirm that belief, not because it wants you to fail, but because consistency feels safe. This is why two people can face the exact same challenge and respond completely differently. One says, "I have to force myself to work." The other thinks, "I finish what I start." The action may look similar from the outside, but internally, the second person's brain isn't debating whether to act, it's protecting an identity. Here's the surprising part. Your identity doesn't change because you repeat positive affirmations. It changes because your brain collects evidence. Every small promise you keep becomes proof. Every workout you finish, every study session you complete, every time you resist an unnecessary distraction, your brain records another vote for the person you're becoming. Researchers studying brain plasticity explain that repeated actions strengthen neural pathways. The more often you act like a disciplined person, the less mental effort is required to repeat that behavior. What once felt unnatural slowly becomes your default response. This is why tiny actions matter far more than dramatic bursts of motivation. You don't need one perfect day to convince your brain. You need enough consistent evidence that it can no longer argue with reality. Stop asking yourself, How do I become disciplined? Start asking, what would a disciplined person do in the next 5 minutes? Then do exactly that. One action won't transform your identity, but hundreds of small actions will. Once your identity begins to shift, there's one more obstacle standing between you and lasting discipline. Your environment may still be designed to make distractions effortless and productive work unnecessarily difficult. The people who maintain extraordinary focus understand one principle that most others completely ignore. The friction principle: make distractions expensive. One of the biggest myths about discipline is that successful people simply have more. In reality, many of them rely on self-control less than everyone else. The difference is that they build environments where the right decision becomes the easiest decision. Behavioral scientists have repeatedly observed that small changes in the environment can produce major changes in behavior. Your brain naturally follows the path that requires the least mental effort. If your phone is next to your keyboard, your brain will reach for it before you even realize what happened. If unhealthy snacks are within arm's reach, you'll eat them more often. These aren't random choices. They're automatic responses to what's easiest in the moment. Highly disciplined people understand this, so they increase friction for bad habits and remove friction for good ones. They don't keep social media logged in on every device. They leave the phone in another room during deep work. They prepare tomorrow's workout clothes the night before. They keep the book they want to read on the desk instead of hidden on a shelf. Every small adjustment quietly influences the next decision. Think about how supermarkets place products at eye level because they know convenience shapes behavior. Digital platforms use the same strategy. Autoplay, endless scrolling, and instant notifications are designed to eliminate friction. If companies spend billions making distraction easier, why wouldn't you spend a few minutes making focus easier? The goal isn't to become mentally stronger than every temptation. The goal is to stop negotiating with temptation in the first place. Every decision you remove saves mental energy for the work that actually matters. Ask yourself one simple question: what is the easiest habit in your current environment? Your answer reveals exactly what your brain has been trained to repeat. Now imagine reversing that equation. Imagine making productive actions so accessible that your brain begins choosing them almost automatically. That shift is possible, but it requires one final ingredient. Your brain must stop waiting until the end of the journey to feel rewarded and start enjoying the process itself. That's where everything changes: the reward transfer technique. Most people make one critical mistake. They expect to feel rewarded after they finish the work. Your brain doesn't like that deal. It has learned to expect rewards now, not later. So every difficult task feels like a sacrifice instead of an opportunity. The solution is to change what your brain associates with satisfaction. Instead of teaching it that the reward only exists at the finish line, you teach it that progress itself is rewarding. Researchers who study learning and habit formation have found that immediate feedback strengthens behavior far more effectively than delayed feedback. That's why video games are so addictive. They constantly show progress. Every level, every point, every achievement tells your brain you're moving forward. Your brain becomes motivated because it can see evidence that the effort is paying off. You can apply the same principle to your own life. Stop measuring success only by completed projects. Measure it by visible progress. A page written, 10 focused minutes. 1 chapter finished, 5 distraction-free repetitions at the gym. Each small victory becomes proof that you're advancing. This also explains why checking off a task on a list feels surprisingly satisfying. It's not the check mark itself that matters. It's the signal your brain receives. That effort produced a meaningful result. That small moment reinforces the behavior and makes repeating it more likely tomorrow. There's another powerful shift. At the end of every focused session, don't immediately jump to social media or another instant reward. Take a few seconds to recognize what you accomplished. Your brain needs time to connect effort with achievement. If every productive session ends with endless scrolling, the reward system starts associating success with distraction instead of with progress. Over time, something remarkable begins to happen. The work itself becomes less intimidating. Your brain starts anticipating the feeling of improvement, competence, and momentum. That's the moment when productivity stops feeling like discipline and starts feeling like momentum. But there's still one obstacle that catches almost everyone. Even after you've changed your identity, redesigned your environment, and begun rewarding progress. The first minutes of any difficult task can still feel uncomfortable. Those minutes determine whether your brain returns to old habits or enters a completely different state of focus. Understanding that window may be the fastest way to rewire your discipline. The 17-minute rewiring window. Have you ever noticed that the hardest part of any important task is almost never the middle or the end? It's the beginning. Those first few minutes feel like you're pushing against an invisible force. Your mind suddenly remembers messages you need to answer. Your room feels like it needs cleaning, and even the smallest distraction seems more important than the work in front of you. This isn't a coincidence. Your brain is comparing a familiar source of instant reward with an activity whose payoff is still uncertain. During this transition, it's normal to experience resistance because your attention is shifting away from fast stimulation toward sustained effort. Here's the mistake most people make. They interpret that resistance as a sign that they're not motivated enough. In reality, it's simply a temporary adjustment period. Specialists in attention and performance explain that the brain often needs uninterrupted time before it fully commits to a cognitively demanding task. If you quit during that period, you teach your brain that discomfort means retreat. If you stay with a task, you teach it that discomfort is only the doorway to focus. This is where the 17-minute rewiring window becomes useful. Make one commitment. No checking your phone, no switching tasks, no negotiating with yourself for just 17 minutes. Don't worry about finishing the project. Your only objective is to remain engaged until that window closes. Something important happens when you repeat this consistently. Your brain stops expecting immediate escape. Instead, it begins recognizing that sustained attention is the new normal. Each successful session weakens the old association between discomfort and distraction, while strengthening the connection between effort and concentration. Many people wait to feel focused before they begin. Highly disciplined people begin before they feel focused, knowing that focus is often the result of sustained action, not the prerequisite for it. This realization destroys one of the biggest myths about productivity. If focus is created after action begins, then waiting for motivation before starting may be the very habit keeping you stuck. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover next. Why motivation is the worst place to start. One sentence keeps millions of people trapped for years. I'll do it when I feel motivated. It sounds reasonable, but it's one of the most destructive beliefs you can have if you want lasting discipline. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are unstable. They change with your sleep, your stress, your environment, and even the weather. If your actions depend on motivation, your progress will always be inconsistent. Researchers who study human behavior have repeatedly found that action often comes before motivation, not the other way around. When you begin moving toward a goal, your brain starts collecting evidence that progress is happening. That progress creates a sense of competence, and competence increases your willingness to continue. In other words, action fuels motivation far more reliably than waiting for motivation to create action. Think about the last time you didn't want to exercise, but forced yourself to complete the first few minutes. Chances are, finishing the workout felt much easier than starting it. The same thing happens when writing, studying, or working on any meaningful project. The hardest barrier is getting into motion. This is why disciplined people rarely ask themselves, "Do I feel like doing this?" They ask a much better question. What's the smallest action I can take right now? That question bypasses emotional resistance and gives the brain an immediate target. Open the document, read one page. Write one paragraph. Put on your running shoes. Tiny actions create momentum, and momentum changes the emotional state that seemed impossible just moments earlier. The irony is that people who appear endlessly motivated usually aren't experiencing more motivation than everyone else. They've simply repeated this cycle so many times that their brain expects action to come first. They don't wait for the feeling because experience has taught them that the feeling usually arrives after they begin. Once you understand this, discipline stops being a personality trait and becomes a repeatable process. Every action strengthens the next one, creating a cycle that grows stronger over time. That cycle is the final piece of the puzzle. And once you see how it works, you'll understand why truly disciplined people no longer have to fight themselves every single day. The discipline loop, how your brain learns to crave progress. Everything we've covered leads to one powerful conclusion. Discipline isn't a trait you're born with. It's a loop your brain learns to repeat. Most people unknowingly live inside a distraction loop. They feel uncomfortable, look for instant relief, receive a quick reward, and teach their brain to repeat the same behavior tomorrow. Every repetition strengthens the habit until it feels automatic. But the exact same mechanism can work in your favor. It begins with one small action. Not a perfect morning routine, not a 5-hour study session, just one meaningful action that moves you closer to the person you want to become. That action creates visible progress. Progress gives your brain evidence that the effort was worthwhile. That evidence builds confidence. Confidence makes the next action feel less difficult. Then the cycle repeats. Action becomes progress. Progress becomes confidence. Confidence strengthens identity. Identity makes action easier. This is how your brain slowly shifts from chasing comfort to chasing growth. Scientists studying neuroplasticity have shown that the brain constantly itself based on repeated experiences. Every time you choose focused work over instant gratification, you're strengthening the neural pathways that support self-control while weakening the pathways that keep you trapped in distraction. Your brain is always adapting. The only question is whether it's adapting toward the life you want or away from it. This is why discipline eventually feels natural. The work hasn't necessarily become easier. Your brain has simply stopped treating it as a threat. It now recognizes effort as something familiar, valuable, and worth repeating. Think back to the beginning of this video. You may have believed that you lacked discipline. Now you know something much more important. Your brain was following the patterns it had learned. And if those patterns were learned, they can also be replaced. From this moment on, stop asking, how can I force myself to be disciplined? Ask a different question every morning. What action will teach my brain that progress is more rewarding than comfort today? Because the day your brain begins craving progress more than instant pleasure is the day discipline stops feeling like a fight. It becomes part of who you are. And when that happens, success is no longer driven by motivation. It's driven by the person you've trained yourself to become.